Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 14th meeting of the Civil Service Commission. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Devine.
Here.
Yantis.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Coleman and if Carrion are absent.
What's next?
Minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Devine.
Yes.
Yantis.
Yes.
Manukian.
Yes. What's next?
Oral communications.
I have no cards. What's next?
No, you need to ask if anybody's wishes to speak to the commission that hadn't turned a card in.
Anybody wish to speak that hasn't turned a card in? No. Thank you. What's next?
Recruitment and examination status report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the item before you is the recruitment and selection status report. This is a reflection of the current recruitment activity amongst the staff. We are on somewhat of a hiring freeze where some positions are being permitted to go through. This list has, again, all the recruitments at various stages with the names of the analysts next to them. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Any questions? Nope. Well, next.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is the list of eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting, and it's been a couple of months, so we do have quite a number of lists. Appear to be 11. We have 7 that were promotional and 4 that were open. On this report, you have the one column, the number of applications for the various recruitments, and in the next column you have the number of people who ultimately made the list for those. A whole variety of recruitments from various departments, so if you have any questions on each of those recruitments, I'd be happy to try and answer them. We have the staff here who worked on these recruitments as well. So.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. What's next?
Revised class specification for approval, store series. Action, approval of revised class specification for store series.
Mr. Doyle, is this the one that's being pulled?
No.
No, that's the next one. Okay.
Yes.
So I guess we go to you, Mr. Doyle?
Yes. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a specification series that is up for approval, and it's a revision of the existing series on the stores series. We call it stores. It's essentially the warehousing operations. As you know, we have warehouses in several of the departments. The 2 biggest ones are GWP and Public Works, and the individuals who staff those warehouses their positions are found within this job series. This is one of those position series that has not been updated for several years. In fact, its prior revision was in May of 1992. And as I had announced a few months ago, we're going to be looking at our specifications and updating them so they're contemporary and more in tune with what's going on currently. The world of warehousing hasn't changed all that much, other than a lot more automation. But this specification and the essential job functions are relatively similar. Some of the changes you'll see throughout this place a much greater emphasis on safety and how to more properly handle the stock in the warehouses. But for the most part, most of the changes are somewhat minor, and they're here for your approval. If you have any questions, I do have staff here to help answer them. Mr. Alex Soto from my staff worked on this specification. We also have Clarence Hilton, who is the store supervisor for GWP here, in case you have any questions. So with that, Mr. Chair.
You guys have any questions?
What was his name again? I wanted to get his name down for it.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Devine.
Yes.
Yantis.
Yes.
Manukian.
Yes. What's next?
Thanks.
Public hearing, appointments by recognized attainment.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, it's our request to pull this item from today's meeting. This is a request of a recognized attainment under both the Charter and the Civil Service rules. This action would require an affirmative vote of all of the members of the commission, and since we do not have all the members of the commission here, we are unable to act on this matter. Given the fact that I'm not sure when we will have all of the members here, we'll either bring this back at another date or possibly utilize some other method for trying to make these appointments.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go ahead.
Ms. Verapetian, can we talk about this even though it's being pulled? Because what I read in here, I'm sorry. What I read in here was that there was some urgency to doing this. I'm not sure I understood. I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Doyle, I would recommend that we read it into the record so we can discuss it. I have some questions about the urgency and the process itself, and then we can always continue it, but I think we need to read it fully into the record.
We do need to read it into the record, but we will not open it up for a public hearing because we've told the individuals that it was going to be continued.
And I don't want to open it. I just want to see get to the process. We don't want to. But why don't we read it in the record, and I can tell you what my thought is.
Okay.
Public hearing, appointments by recognized attainment.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
In reading this, it sounds to me like we're bringing some people over that were with the previous contractor, and I don't understand I understand it if I understood the facts. Are we going to lose the employees? Are they going to be able to be paid? Are they going to? Because arguably, I read exactly what you read, the rule that said all of its members, and it struck me that meant if one person voted it down, it wasn't, and all could be all five, and we could be months away from getting all members present. And I just want to make sure that we're not losing anything, or if there's anything this commission could do in 2 weeks to make sure that we don't lose the individuals, assuming that they're as urgent as it appears to be on the report.
Yeah, and how do we solve that?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, all members, if you had a vacancy, that would not go towards the 5 count. So if you had a vacancy and the commission had only 4 members, all members would mean the 4.
Okay.
I got it. So it does not have to be all 5. If there's a okay.
But if we continue to have 5 members and one basically term expires May 1 and we don't have a successor, until there's a successor, that person's still a member.
The person can step down.
That didn't answer the question. I understand the person could step down, but if the person doesn't step down, then that person counts as a member.
The person is expected, the commissioner whose term expires, but the successor has not yet been appointed, the code does allow the person to continue to complete or continue to serve until such time as a successor is appointed.
That's my point. So that person would count as a member.
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Until there's a reappointment.
Or a resignation, which would then leave only 4 members.
Mr. Chair, my plan would be to get together with the department and assess the urgency of this matter and whether or not it would be prudent to bring it back at a meeting when we do believe we're going to have 5 members, or pursue this simply through a recruitment process. And that's another way of handling it, perfectly legitimate. We felt that, given the circumstances and given the truly highly specialized experience of these 2 individuals who've been running this plant for over 12 years, that this seemed a appropriate thing to put forth as a recognized attainment appointment. And I think those of you who've been on the commission a while know that this is not a process that we utilize very
10 years,
frequently.
never heard of it.
But I can only recall one other time in my career here where we've tried it. So this was, again, an attempt to handle this in an expeditious manner, recognizing these individuals' particular skill, experience in operating a power plant in a landfill. It's not somebody that you're going to be able to find, on the street corner.
Sam, you could do that, can't you?
Absolutely.
But we may end up, given the time constraints, just doing a recruitment and putting a bulletin up and having these individuals apply.
But we're not going to lose the individuals.
No, and again, that's something I need to discuss with the department. This was a major deal that was struck with the operators of this, the landfill, back in December. And, I mean, involved multi-millions of dollars, and there were certain agreements on the retention of those employees in some capacity, whether through a contract or whether as city employees or whether as hourly employees, and I don't have the specifics on that and how much. I'm not certain how much time we actually have in order to comply with that agreement, but I'll be doing that with the department probably sometime next week. And
So we'll sit tight until we hear
yes,
from
yes.
On a bigger picture view, you know the reason why on this particular item or this particular rule requires all 5 members to vote affirmatively as opposed to all other actions which are the majority of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Devine, the easy answer to that is the reason is because that's how the rules are written and that's how the charter is written. This is the recognized attainment provision is coming right out of the charter, Article 24, Section 5. My assumption, and perhaps Ms. Varpetian could elaborate more, she spends a lot of time researching the rationale for some of these rules, but my assumption is that this is to some degree a circumvention of a recruitment process, and the writers of the charter and the rules wanted to make sure that this isn't abused by whoever's sitting in my chair. So they wanted to set a pretty high bar for allowing these to go by. So that would be my guess.
I think that would be a good one.
And I guess that was the reasoning that you've only seen it one time before.
Yes.
I'd never seen it.
Any other questions? Okay, what's next?
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Dorado?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the agenda forecast lists the items for our upcoming meeting. We will certainly need to have the meeting on April the 28th, as not only have the one report on advertising budget expenditures, but also we anticipate opening a hearing on a disciplinary matter, and I also anticipate having a medical rehabilitation transfer. Both of those items would be held in closed session. And as far as the meetings in May, we really, other than probably some job specifications and other job bulletins that may come up, I don't know at this point what we have planned for the future.
Okay. Any comments, any questions? Okay. What's next?
Reports and information, past due employee performance evaluations.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is your regular report on the past due employee performance evaluations. This report has the past dues going back to from our last meetings, and as you see, we have most departments with no past dues, and you have a few out there with some first notices and a few with some second notices. You may have noticed the new names for some of our departments. The ones that begin with the word community, an easy way of remembering the new ones: Community Planning Department, Community Redevelopment and Housing, and Community Services and Parks. And so those are all listed there. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Otherwise, this report is a note and file.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Sure.
At what point does some action be taken by either Human Resources or some other enforcement arm of the city when the notices get to second notice or a third notice? What is the process, or other than just giving them a third notice and a fourth notice?
Typically, when we see either a pattern or a lot of late evaluations, even in the first notice category, but certainly when they get to the second notice, I will send a note to that particular department to remind them to do a better job on those. And of course, per our commission policy, if a notice reaches its third notice, that department head is required to come here and give an explanation before the commission. But that's essentially what we have in place. And if you'd like to make it more stringent or give me direction on anything additional, I'd be happy to consider that.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to read this on?
You want me to read them? Okay.
Go ahead.
We have the following departments that have no past due notices: the city manager's office, the city treasurer's office, the finance office, the fire department, Glendale Water and Power with 372 employees, human resources, the library, the police with 362 employees, and that's it. We have a total of 25 past dues in the first or second stages out of 1,764 employees.
Okay, what's next?
Civil Service Commission and our staff comments.
Gentlemen, any comments?
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.